Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. I'd like to invite Deputy Mayor Sheila O'Leary to the podium for the land acknowledgement.
Beautiful. Thank you. I would like to respectfully acknowledge the territory in which we gather as the ancestral homeland of the Beothuk and the island of the Newfoundland and Labrador as the ancestral homeland of the Mi'kmaq and Beothuk. I would also like to recognize the Inuit and Nunatsiavut and Nunatukavut, and the Innu of Nitassinan and their ancestors as the original people of Labrador. We strive for respectful relationships with all peoples of the province as we search for collective healing and true reconciliation and honor this beautiful land together. Thank you.
My name is Sean McGrath. I'm a professor of philosophy at Memorial University and one of the organizers of tonight. Many people were involved in bringing about tonight's event, which is in fact the prelude to tomorrow's event. So I need to acknowledge the Royal Society of Canada College, the Royal Society of Canada Atlantic for their generous support, the Ocean Frontier Institute, the Nunatsiavut government, the Faculty of Music at Memorial University, the Department of Philosophy, the Department of Religious Studies, and all those who are giving their time to this event tonight and to the events tomorrow. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to this musical and cinematic prelude to the Future of Oceans Symposium. The symposium takes place tomorrow, starting at 9 a.m. in the gorgeous and shiny new Signal Hill campus. We have an all-star lineup of ocean researchers, policy analysts, and policymakers sharing their knowledge with us between 9 and noon tomorrow, and the general public is warmly invited. The proceedings will be live streamed on the For a New Earth website. That's www.foranewearth.org. And if you land on Eckhart Tolle's homepage, that's the wrong one. In the afternoon, 50 or so delegates invited from academia, from industry, and from the community will cloister themselves and co-author a white paper of concrete recommendations about how to steward the North Atlantic in an era of rapid and, at least in part, anthropogenic climate change. Tonight is an opportunity for all of us to remember the special relationship that exists between Newfoundland and Labrador and the North Atlantic. It is an evening of sublime music, of memory, some pleasant, some tragic, and of discussion. But this is not just any time in the history of Newfoundland and Labrador, nor is it any time in the history of the North Atlantic. This is, in the view of many, a moment of crisis for our oceans. The globe, as you know, is warming faster than expected, and the goals set by the Paris Accord on climate change in 2015 to mitigate anthropogenic climate change by reducing emissions to 350 parts per million, thereby maintaining global temperatures to under 2 degrees relative to pre-industrial times, these targets now seem naive. Few climate scientists or environmentalists believe we can meet them. Indeed, we may have already surpassed them. Many say it's now time for us to move from mitigation of climate change to adaptation. Newfoundland and Labrador, whose history is bound up with the harvesting of the sea, is now called to think differently. The sea, in the era of climate change, the so-called Anthropocene, is no longer merely a resource, one which we could assume would always be there for us. But neither is it a wilderness that thrives without us, since everything we do now will affect all life that depends on the ocean. The sea, in an era of climate change, is neither for us, nor is it simply for itself, but it is with us. Our destinies are now inextricably intertwined. It's no longer the boundless source of life, the origin, the fathomless depths of 19th century romanticism. It has been revealed, along with everything else on Earth, as precarious, as a network of contingencies which make possible our lives, along with the lives of everything else that lives on the planet. Honor thy father and mother, says the Hebrew Bible. It's time for us to honor the ocean. She's becoming tired, even worn out. She is no longer as productive as she was. But we too, we have come of age. We can no longer pretend that she will always be what she was. Nor can we continue to proceed as though we had no responsibilities in regard to her, that we owe her nothing. No, it's time for us to grow up, to look after the one who's looked after us so well. The future of oceans depends on what we will do now. The things that we have depended upon now depend upon us. A moment of taking responsibility for our existence on the earth is upon all of us, Newfoundland and Labrador included, and this taking responsibility will affect everything that shares the planet with us. None of this could happen tonight and tomorrow without the Royal Society of Canada's financial support. The Royal Society of Canada is Canada's senior national academy. Over a century old, the RSC exists to promote Canadian research and scholarly accomplishment, to mentor young scholars and artists, to recognize academic and artistic excellence, and to advise governments, non-governmental organizations, and Canadians generally on matters of public interest. Two branches of the RSC are involved in tonight's event: the College of New Scholars, Scientists, and Artists, and the Royal Society of Canada Atlantic. To both groups, my heartfelt thanks. The local organizer of the event is Newfoundland and Labrador's nonprofit organization For a New Earth. FANE, as we call it, is 4 years old this year. It stages ecological interventions in the province to raise awareness around environmental issues and to galvanize political will. It does this primarily by bringing academics into the community and bringing the community into the academy for the sake of promoting what we call ecological conversion for everyone. Conversion is not a matter of the head. It is primarily a matter of the heart. And for this reason, FANE has always included the visual and performing arts in its activities. Where science and academic disciplines can be esoteric and exclude the public, art has a way of breaking through to everyone. FANE has an openly political agenda to change the way Newfoundland and Labrador thinks and acts so that we can take ecological responsibility for the part of the planet to which we belong. But FANE is nonpartisan. The everybody in our mission statement is really everybody: liberal and conservative, socialist and capitalist. And if you are wondering how that works, I invite you to attend one of our organizational meetings. Let's just say things get lively. But now is not the time to talk politics. Now is the time to listen. And we have the great privilege to have Canada's premier piano and violin ensemble, Duo Concertante, perform for us. They will perform Andrew Staniland's The Ocean is Full of Its Own Collapse. Duo Concertante are Nancy Don and Timothy Steeves, both research professors at MUN and fellows of the Royal Society of Canada. They will be joined by local actress Monica Walsh, who will be reading from Lisa Moore's February, upon which the piece of music is based. The performance will last 30 minutes or so, after which there will be a 10-minute intermission. We will then return here for a viewing of a couple of cinematic treasures from the NFB archives and a public discussion before we move to the atrium for a reception. To introduce the music and the musicians, it's my pleasure to invite the composer to the podium and my colleague in the Royal Society of Canada's College, Andrew Staniland, a Juno-nominated composer of contemporary and classical music. He is also a professor of music at MUN. What's going on with MUN's Faculty of Music? It's full of stars. We were both invited into the RSC College in its inaugural year, and we've been planning to do something together for years, and at last, it's happening. Ladies and gentlemen, Andrew Staniland.
Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. I'm delighted to be here with you this afternoon to share this piece. I'd like to tell you a little bit about it and how it came to be. I've been working with Duo Concertante since about 2011. As Sean said, they are Canada's preeminent violin and piano duo, and they play all over the world and are very interested in commissioning new work. And when we sat down and decided to do a new commission, we wanted to do something that was very special and very relevant, and something that had a little more weight than just another piece of music about the music itself. And the topic for the commission we ended up coming back to Lisa Moore's wonderful book February, which was published in 2013. Now, February, as many of you probably know, it's a fictional book about a very real event in 1982 when the Ocean Ranger oil rig sunk in a vicious Valentine's Day storm, and everybody on board perished. So it's a tragedy very familiar to those of you that live here in Newfoundland and Labrador. And in fact, the anniversary just passed last month. And we wanted to make a piece that reflected on this book and had readings from the book, but also intertwined that with the music, and that's what we did. Now, the piece runs in, as Sean said, it's about 30 minutes long, and it runs in 5 distinct parts, so it's things you can listen for. So the first movement is about 5 or 6 minutes long, and it's only music for violin and piano. And then we're treated to a reading of about the same duration by Monica. And that piece is called Oil Companies and Candlelight. After that movement and the narration, we then hear a second movement called Island. And then we're treated to a second narration by Monica. Then in the third movement, which is called Sparks and Death, is the narration and the music woven together. And it's interesting, the book is very much about everything that you can imagine when you talk about an oil rig sinking and everything that comes with that. But what's interesting about it in the context of this conference is that the backdrop for it, of course, is the North Atlantic Ocean and all that comes with that. And in thinking about giving this brief introduction, it occurred to me how omnipresent the ocean is in the minds of artists. I think that as long as there's been stories and as long as there's been pieces and composers like me, there have been people writing about the ocean, both as itself and as a backdrop for things. People like Claude Debussy with Jeux de Vague, or one of my favorite composers, John Luther Adams, an American composer, wrote a stunningly beautiful work worthy of all of our attention called Ocean. What is it called? No, it's Become Ocean, which is Become Ocean is a references John Cage, and John Cage, the famous composer, said, "But one day we will all become ocean." But John Luther Adams has taken this concept and say, "No, we really all will become ocean," and it's this incredible, moving piece, about 45 minutes in duration, about sea level rise, which is very poignant. So the ocean is always there, and in this piece, I think you'll hear that in the music and in the text. It's not a piece that I would call entertainment, something that you would do in between a nice dinner and another nice dinner, or whatever it is you like to do. It's the subject matter in the book is very real, and and while it's full of very uncomfortable things and contemplating all these things that Sean so eloquently spoke of, but it's also about beauty and love and life. So I'll leave it there. Please join me in welcoming these wonderful musicians, Nancy Don, Timothy Steeves, and Monica Walsh.
died on the Ocean Ranger had gone out of their way to say goodbye. And it was strange. That's the way it got remembered. That's what everyone remarked on years later. He called up just before he left. There were people who went on hoping for months. They said there must be some island out there, and that's where the survivors were. There was no island. Everybody knew there was no island. It was impossible. People who knew the coast like the back of their hand, but they thought an island might exist that they hadn't noticed before. Some people said there might be. Those people were in shock. Some mothers kept setting the table for an empty seat. The oil companies were all about acceptable levels of risk, and they always had been. They spoke of possible faults in the system and how to avoid them, here. They advised strongly against intuition when assessing risk. If you were scared shitless, they said, that was only intuition. And you should ignore it. They asked the public to consider the overall good to be achieved when we do take risks. They spoke in that back-assed way, and what they meant was, if you don't do the job, we'll give it to someone who will. They meant there's money to be made. They meant we will develop the economy. They meant there isn't any risk, so shut the fuck up about it. Except they didn't say fuck. They said, consider the overall public good. The news was on the radio. At the university, there were students who had fathers on the rig and brothers on the rig, and some of the teachers brought televisions into the classroom from the audiovisual department so they could watch when a story came on the news. People were calling relatives on the mainland. People were arranging airline tickets. The idea of men drowning in that cold darkness was staggering and nightmarish. The idea of men drowning in that cold darkness was staggering and nightmarish. The idea of men drowning in that cold darkness. And the company had said the bloody thing would never sink. No matter what. The Royal Commission said there was a fatal chain of events that could have been avoided, but for the inadequate training of personnel, lack of manuals, and technical information. And that is the true story. It is the company's fault. But there is also the obdurate wall of water. And because of it, Helen will finally give up her careful recital of the fatal chain of events. Her father-in-law, Dave O'Mara, had identified Cal's body. He told her this over the phone. "I wanted to catch you," he said. Helen had known there wasn't any hope, but she felt faint when she heard Dave O'Mara's voice. She had to hold on to the kitchen counter. She didn't faint because she had the children in the house and the bath was running. "It gave me a turn," her father-in-law said. "I'll tell you that much." There were long stretches in that phone call where neither of them said anything. Dave O'Mara wasn't speaking because he didn't know he wasn't speaking. He could see before him whatever he'd seen when he looked at his dead son, and he thought he was telling her all of that, but he was in his own kitchen, staring silently at the floor. Looking at his dead son must have been like watching a movie where nothing moved. It was not a photograph because it had duration. It had to be lived through. A photograph has none of that. This was a story without an ending. It would go on forever. And Helen was trying not to faint because it would scare the living daylights out of the children. And besides, she had known. She'd known the minute the bastard rig sank. Dave said, "It was Cal." Helen lost her peripheral vision. She could see a spot about the size of a dime in a field of black. She tried to focus on the surface of the kitchen table. It was a varnished pine table they'd bought at a yard sale. And in that little circle, she could see the grain of the wood and a glare of overhead light. She had willed the spot to open wider so she could take in the bowl with the apples and the side of the fridge and the linoleum and then the window and the garden. Her scalp was tingling and a drip of sweat ran from her hairline down her temple. Her face was damp with sweat as if she had been running. Dave said they had bodies down there with just their ordinary clothes on, and a few men who weren't fully dressed, like they just left their bunks. And there were some had their eyes open. One man in particular, Dave said, looked right at me, draped in white sheets. Dave said they looked alive, those men. He'd half expected them to move. "I can't get over it," he said. Helen could only think of how frightened Cal must have been. He couldn't swim. She felt such a panic. She wanted to know exactly what had happened to Cal. She wanted that more than anything else. Only 22 bodies, Dave said. Helen was in a panic as if something very bad was going to happen, but it had already happened. It was hard to take in that it had already happened. Why was she in a panic? It was as if she were split in half. Something bad was going to happen to her, and then there was the other her. She, the one who knew it had already happened. It was a mounting and useless panic, and she did not want to faint. But she was being flooded with the truth. It wasn't going to happen. It had already happened. "You don't want to see him," Dave said. "You see your life, but it's as though you are behind a glass partition and the sparks fly up and you cannot feel them." The men on the Ocean Ranger sent out a mayday. "We have a list from which we cannot recover." They gave the coordinates. "A crevice forms in the cliff of water, and it turns, as things sometimes turn, into concrete." Is it concrete or is it glass? It's mute and full of noise, angry and tranquil. How like itself and unlike anything else. How unlike a Ferris wheel or a dog whimpering in its sleep, or popcorn in the microwave oven, or watching your lover have an orgasm, the clench of a foot curled around a calf, or a square of sunlight on the hardwood floor. Growing old. It is like none of these things, not remotely like. Or trying to hang on to an ice railing during the tipping upwards of the monstrous hunk of metal. How unlike. This wall of water has always been. It did not design itself, or come from anywhere else, or form itself. There was never a forming of. It just is. It is still and self-combusting, hungry and glutted with love, full of mystery, full of a void, full of God. Get down on your knees before this creature. It is the center of the outside. This wave is death. When we say death, we mean something we cannot say. The wave, because it is just water after all. It's just water. It's just naked power, just force. The wave is a mirror image of death, not death itself, but it is advantageous not to glance that way. Avoid the mirror if you can. Cultivate an air of preoccupation. Get out. Death would like to be introduced. It is willing to be polite. There would be no rush. When the wall closes over Cal, he will be like a fly in amber, a riddle of time, a museum piece. He will lose the desire for escape. The obsession with living will seem like a dalliance to him then. Stillness will be the new thing. The ocean is full of its own collapse. Its destiny is to annihilate itself thoroughly. But for a brief moment, it stands up straight. It assumes the pose of something that can last. This wave has been working towards the chewing and swallowing of the world since the beginning of time. Chomp! 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 What is the world, after all? A great guzzling of itself is death, or whatever the end of life may be called, or referred to as, or spoken of. But we don't know how to name it, because it is unknowable. Except those men know it. Cal knows it. It is a glittering thing, big and disco ball beautiful, full of dazzle, and he left her for it. She heard Cal in the bathroom that night brushing his teeth. He spoke to her, but he was not there. He was passing through. He came to her. The rig tips, and all the water falls away from its decks, and the men hold the rail. They hang on. It tips, and the card table slides sideways, and all the silver coins bounce across the floor, dimes and nickels and quarters. And now, at last, she is with him. Helen is in his skin. She is Cal, and she lives through this every night. It is an absolute terror that she wakes to. An absolute terror that has invested itself in the microfilaments of her being. But she is not there, because nobody can be there. The dimes roll on their rims, and the playing cards slide off the table, and the table falls on its side. Cal is making his way up to the deck. He is hauling himself hand over hand up the stair rail. There is a monstrous crevice in the concrete ocean, and it inspires a terror that is full of calm. It was decided. They knew it all along. Cal is on the deck and he's almost gone. Please go, she thinks. Please go, let it be over. Because his panic is in her skin. Just as he has made love to her, and just as she has had his 4 children, and just as she has watched him sleep and cook his meals, and made up a notion of what love might be, and followed through with it, she decided that love might look something like this: a sketch, a thing, a plan. She figured it out, and then she brought it into being, breathed life into it. She and Cal had stayed up late and said, "It must look like this." They agreed, and then they stuck it out. Somehow, Helen had picked up the idea that there was such a thing as love, and she had invested fully in it. If they were wrong, nobody ever said. Helen knew Cal's moods, and the two of them gossiped and made up stories and held each other and fought and were careful about what they said, even in anger. And his panic is inside her. The panic of facing death. That must be part of what they decided. If Cal died out there on the rig, Helen would never forget him. That was the promise. She will never forget him. of the men who died that day on the Ocean Ranger went out of their way to say goodbye. That's what got remembered. He called up just before he left.
All right, we're going to continue now with the film portion of the evening. Excellent. It's difficult to come back after that amazing piece of music. I'm Barry Stephenson. I'm a professor of religious studies here at Memorial, and I'm also a co-director of For New Earth. I'll just have a few brief introductory remarks about these two films that we're going to watch. These are from the archives of the National Film Board. First is Billy Crane Moves Away. This is a film by Colin Lowe. It comes from 1967. Maybe some of you have seen it. It's one of the films of the Fogo Island experiment, which was part of the Challenge for Change project. The second film is titled Hand.Line.Cod by Justin Sims from 2013. These films are about the complex, historic, and ongoing economic, political, cultural, and other kinds of relationships that this province has to a resource and a good provided by the ocean. Of course, fish and fishing. Moving away is hard. Like Billy Crane, we are faced with moving away from another resource gifted to us by the ocean, which is oil. And the time of loving oil is most certainly behind us, which is not to say we should hate it. It's too much part of our lives to hate it. This hall, after all, was built by oil. But we do need to move away from it, and we need to move right now. And moving away is hard. Hand.Line.Cod perhaps shows us that moving away is also a moving towards, and perhaps a moving back towards. We often assume if we give up something, if we move away, if we make change, that this is only hard, only a loss, only frightening. And it is. But there also can be great opportunity in crisis, opportunity to make things even better in the midst of it, and once you get to the other side of it. So I selected these two films because I think they have some kind of arc to them, and I think they can tell us something about the situation that we're living through right now. So with that, we're going to turn to Billy Crane Moves Away.
How old were you when you first started fishing, Billy?
9 years old. I've been at it ever since. Haven't missed a summer since I was 9 years old.
And you've seen some rough voyages, too.
Oh, well, I've seen a few, yeah. Not all. It was not all smooth sailing, but we got through anyway. Sometimes scared and sometimes not. So I imagine.
What do you like about it that kept you at it?
Well, one thing, you was your own boss. Most of the times, if you went to Labrador and somebody else was skipper, I don't know, it didn't seem like it. You was under another man like you are when you go to work on a construction job or something, but the biggest part of my time, well, I went off on my own. I had no one skipper over me. As far as I'm concerned, the fishery is out anyway, or a steam-shore fishery. The failing now for this last 4 years, and, well, this year has been the worst. That's for me anyway, and I think for the most of the fishermen around there.
Did you see it approaching? I mean, has it been rising?
Yeah, well, I think we all saw this now for the last 3 or 4 years anyway. And the time has come, well, we must get out. Or I got to get out anyway. Perhaps some of the crowd is going to hang on a while yet, but...
Do you think the inshore fishermen got a square break?
No, I don't, sir, think the inshore fishermen have got a square break. I don't think that there's been anything done for the inshore fishery yet, clear of a few small boats like long liners built. And,
Could anything have been done earlier?
I think so. I don't know, but I think if they'd built some larger boats like we were used to back 20 years ago, schooners, and give it to someone which had employed about 8 or 10 men every summer, each boat, I think it's been a lot better than what so many of those long liners they're built.
You tried to get one, didn't you?
I tried to get a schooner, Fred, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. I went to St. John's because I never had a down payment. They wouldn't even talk to me. They did talk, all right, but they told me that they couldn't do anything for me. So I just had to come home and go on the same way I was going before, which I think if they'd have given me a boat 5 or 6 years ago, I wouldn't have to leave today, which I'm going to leave now.
What are you going to do?
I'm going to leave and go to the mainland and try to see if I can earn a fair living anyway.
What do you feel about pulling up?
Pardon?
What do you feel about pulling up? What are your feelings about pulling up?
Well, I don't want to do it. I've been 25 years there now, and what I've got in 25 years there around me, well, so far as I'm concerned, it's only about the same as a pile of stuff you'd have in the garbage, yeah? Throw out.
How much gear have you?
I don't know, Fred. I got 2 cod traps, 10 gill nets, 2 boats and engines, and other equipment that, well, hardly worth naming, I suppose, but it's all worth money.
Why do you think fish is so scarce as it is? You always did it well over the years.
Yeah, well,
What's
I
happened in
don't,
recent years?
I don't know, Fred, but so many boats, offshore boats anyway, they're dragging up the fish. I suppose the fish can't stand it anyway. They're over there from Russia and all the countries. One time, well, if the fish didn't come and swim in the cod trap, or you get them on a trawl, you didn't get them. But now they throw us down something and scoops up everything from the bottom. So fish can't stand that. I don't think it can. I might be one of the foolish ones now. But I don't think our government will give the inshore fishermen a square deal. Sir. You're putting too much money in those big concerns, fish plants, and you're not allowed to have a long liner built now without having her built in a certain place, is you? Perhaps I'm mistaken now, but I think you ought to have her built in a certain place. Oh, that's too foolish as far as I'm concerned, talk about.
You won't go to Buren?
No, I won't go to Buren. If I got to leave where I'm fishing to now, leave me gear, and I'm going to Buren, they're not going to drive me there. That's too foolish to talk about anyway. Leave one.
Work on a dragger?
No. No, I wouldn't work under someone else on a dragger. When I had my own fishing property. Get rid of that and go and fish on a dragger under someone else, no. After asking the government for a boat. They wouldn't recognize me, so. Well, Mr. Earl there knows that I was interested in that because I was talking to him about it. As far as I'm concerned, there's no work in Newfoundland anyway.
Yeah.
Few jobs. There's more Newfoundlanders to take them now and what, there's jobs for the Newfoundlanders. Mr. Smallwood, when he went into government first, he was going to have 2 jobs for each Newfoundlander. There's 10 Newfoundlanders for each job now, as far as I'm concerned. We got to go because our gear that we're using now will soon be gone. I got cod traps there. I can't keep cod traps going on 4 or 5 candles of fish. You know that as well as I do. You was born in a fishing community anyway and lived there up until the time you went to war, I suppose.
But you've heard of the resettlement benefits by leaving. Are you going to apply for that?
No, I'm not going to apply for no resettlement. You can't get it, can you? Not move to the mainland.
Why not move somewhere else in Newfoundland where you can use it?
No,
That's what
Fred.
it's for.
No, Freddie. They're paying $6,000 for the move. It's better for them to take the $6,000 and give it to someone to help to buy a good boat for to go to the Labrador Fishery Company where you can move from place to place to look for that fish instead of shifting them somewhere and perhaps end up having to feed them. Same thing as got to do around here. I don't see any point in that.
You're not going to the mainland then to get money to come back?
No, if I can get work, I'm staying to the mainland. Take my family. I'm moving myself, and son is going first, and I'm open before too long. Within a month or a month and a half, I'll be able to get my family there.
You would not come back?
I won't come back if I can get unless I'm forced back. We can't say we're not going to do something because we don't know what we got to do. That's something. I wouldn't say that I'm going to leave change on, not come back anymore. That's too foolish to talk about anyway. I might have to come back. I might be glad to get back. But what can I do? I can't stay here. I raised part of my family here, and I got through very good. But I got to get out now, it looks like. Can't do it any longer. The inshore fishery is gone. The false fishery failed on Change Islands about 15 years ago. There haven't been a false catch, not for 15 years. And now the summer fishery, this last 4 years, is gone. So there's no fisherman can survive through that. There might be a few. I'll stick it for a little while yet, but not too damn many.
How did you decide on Toronto?
Well, the wife has a sister there, and her husband, which been gone 18 years. And, well, I finally decided that I'd move somewhere to look for a job anyway. Oh, I guess that's how I come to decide to move. I'll go up and I think I can get
You
work.
heard from them, have you?
Yeah. Yeah, so this is one of my old buddies anyway that I fished on the Labrador with.
I'm not going to have much to say. I just like to endorse what Mr. Crane said. I think Labrador fishing is not finished yet. I've got a boat suitable. I think you will still get a living by that. Labrador. That's about all I like of it.
You think that you could get a living on the Labrador and maintain your own homes and families right here?
Yeah, right here, yeah, without being pushed out.
Well, what I'd like to have if I wouldn't like to have anything smaller than the one carry around 400 drabs of fish. Take around 5 men. And I think that if I had that today, powered like it is now with engines, I don't think I'd have any trouble to get a living on the Labrador and feed my crowd and employ 4 more men there myself. Because when we were going to Labrador, we had to get about by sail and wait for the wind to carry us there. Which now don't matter too much, don't matter anything. It's just not a storm. We're sure to get there. Mr. Ledoux knows that as well as I do. That we've punished a lot of long hours. And we were asleep lots of times 4 hours and got up and been further astern than when we started.
What do you think will happen?
I think eventually that she's going to die, so I suppose that that's what they're after anyway. They're after freezing us out. And there's no fish. We got to get out. There's no work. They're not going to give us anything, not like boats. There might be a few long liners. Anybody got money to put up, but I got no money to put up anyway. I'm just out of the picture, so I got to move out.
You think this happened to many places in Newfoundland?
Yeah, this is not the only place. Fridge is going to happen to a lot more places. Clear of this place. I don't know what Fogo Island is going to do, but she might survive. I'm doubtful. She won't survive, not the way she is now for sure. Perhaps the government will step in and do something there. I hope they do. And I hope that the rest that are left on down won't have to move out. I'm not moving out and wishing that everybody will have to move out. Because I still like to change oils now as well as ever I did.
When these fellows come back from Toronto, when you hear from them, what do they say about Newfoundland then?
Well, they says they're proud they moved out, Fred. All effort that I've been talking to them, that ever there might be 1 or 2 come back. Well, they had a reason, perhaps, called. But 90% say that they're glad they moved out. They won't come back anymore. So I'm going to try it now. See where I'm going to come back. I hope not. When I move, that's it. I want to say, just I got to move with this anyway.
You're going to move where you can work and earn a living.
That's right. Or try to.
You're not going to accept welfare.
No. That's all I hope. I hope Mr. Smallwood will wake up and see that he haven't done too much yet for the inshore fishermen. Like I said, he could build a few long liners, but I don't think that's all the art to the fishery, the long liners. I think the day is coming when the ones that is 40 feet, 50 feet now, won't be any good. You'll want ones 100. All of those long liners got to go out again yet. Something larger than that. I don't know what you think of it, Wes, but that's what I
Yeah,
think.
I think so too, yes. I think I'll buy them 2 a penny by and by.
Yeah.
Later on.
Well, all right, Freddie, if you put 40 long liners here and change oils, which they can't go off 100 mile, you know that. If they goes off, and there's any fish, they can only stay a night. They must come back. Well, you know as well as I do what fishing ground there is from Twillingate Long Point out to the Funks for 40 long liners around there. There's none, is there? Not for those many boats. Well, they got to go somewhere else to fish, the Labrador or somewhere. Well, if you haven't got it large enough for the salt you're catching for at least 3 weeks, it's not much good, as far as I'm concerned. What do you think of it?
I think you're right.
Huh?
I think you're right there, yes. They're not the answer, not for Labrador fish.
Where we're catching cod to here, Iceberg Alley. This is Iceberg Alley. You got the coldest water. We got northern cod.
It's a challenge to find the right place to catch fish, to know where to go on the grounds, to use the tides in your favour.
We are people of the fish. Our confidence is wrapped up in the fish. It's so essential to restore our faith in the cod and our confidence, what comes with that. hand-lining for fish, catching them live, catching them one at a time by hook and line, is something we've done since around the 1600s. And we've continued to catch cod that way, even after the advent of industrialized fishing. So even after the big boats came, the factory trawlers came, our fishers continued the old way.
The older people didn't wear gloves. They were too stubborn, eh? They never had gloves. Oh, that's a nice fish.
Well, hand-line fishes, hand-line cod, I mean, the price is a lot better. Of course, the product is going to be a lot better if it's handled properly.
It's handled with care too, yeah. Yeah, because when you're hand-lining, you're hauling fish up one by one. I like a gill net that's coming up like probably 20 fish to one time, then it's coming over the horizon to the boat, the gunnels of the boat, and squat, and it's coming around the gurdy, and it's squat up and that, and then you've towels it out, and then you've got to haul the gill.
It's banging around.
Bust the net open to get the fish out, and then it's hovering back the boat. But the single fish is coming up, you know, it's handled, it's blade, hand-line is definitely the way to go when it comes to quality.
The stage as it is with the description and a little bit of water.
Currently.
Maybe the punt edition is a nice idea.
I like the idea of the punt. I mean, that was the boat that we fished in for a couple hundred years. So what we do is we encourage our fishers to handline. We pay them more than double the market rates for that fish. And we ship it to restaurants in Toronto, to chefs who appreciate that premium quality product. The difference between a hand-line fillet and a mechanized cod fillet is very, very different. And they are absolutely blown away by the quality of the product, the taste, the texture, the color of this cod is something that they've not seen in the marketplace before. And that's because we've never had a hand-line cod product in the marketplace before.
Well, boys, there's all over this. There's a lot of good fishermen can't hand-line fish. They come back into the end of the day with nothing. True, yeah. But I've been successful in hand-lining cod. I guess I know the grounds, I know where to trap on the grounds, and I guess that's the reason why we've been successful. That's the kind we're looking for. One, this is a good one. Yeah, nice one, boy. I didn't think you were going to catch me here. I only gave you that permit for 1 day every day. 1 day only? That was only a 1 day permit you was allowed there. Yeah. Yes, boy. Lovely morning. What is that, boy? Yep.
I think the time for intermediaries is over. I think the opportunity is to take their product directly to market themselves. every fish that comes from the water we have to honor. The lowly cod can't pay for everything, but I think when we connect directly with our markets, we get maximum return from each fish. And I think that's the greatest honor you can give to any creature that you take from the ocean. Our real secret mission, I mean, there's a secret mission here. Our secret mission is to drive up the price of fish, which is exactly the opposite of what's been going on for the last 50 years.
Here at Ruby Watchco, we always do what we call Fish Friday. I always grew up having fish on Fridays. So lately now, the last couple weeks, we've been just bringing in the Hand.Line.Cod for Fish Friday, and the response is amazing. Most people have never had Hand.Line.Cod, let alone line-caught cod, and they are blown away. They don't understand, like they can't even hardly describe to us how good it is. It's amazing. Look how pretty that is, eh?
It brings a smile to my face, because if I know there's someone out there that likes the quality of the fish, guaranteed that the demand will get better. As people find out about our cod, they're going to want it. And if it comes from a chef and he says you got good cod, other people take their word. And brings a smile to my face, because I know there's going to be a big demand for the cod in the future. Looks like right now we may be getting bigger quotas, and every cent counts to the fishermen. Every cent counts.
Try to keep a serious face. It's too noisy. It's too nice of a day to keep a serious face. I said it's too nice of a day to keep a serious face.
Hello, everyone. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I think that we owe a big round of applause once again to Andrew Staniland, Monica Walsh, and Duer Concertante for that amazing performance before the film. So. A heartfelt thank you. So I don't know about you guys, but I definitely said that it's too nice of a day to keep a serious face a couple of times over the past 2 days. So I hope that you enjoyed the films, and I hope that this evening was moving for you in more ways than one. We're now going to have a short 10-minute discussion just to sort of bring awareness to what we're doing here together and to continue with FANE's goal to raise ecological consciousness and awareness. So I ask you to give your reflections, whatever they may be now, but please keep your comments to about 2 sentences. And yeah, we only have 10 minutes, so it's more to get a sort of collective discussion going that we can definitely continue throughout the reception. So we saw that the ocean is so integral to our life here in Newfoundland and Labrador, and that is connected to the tragedy and also the prosperity of the province. And yeah, I would like to hear what you have to say about that. Is there prosperity? Gordon Slade, please.
Well, I'm going to mention this tomorrow, but today I checked with the Fogo Island Co-op in terms of how much of the fish last year was taken by Hand.Line and how much was taken by gill nets. And more than half of the fish taken last year was taken by Hand.Line, like you saw here today. And a number of years ago, you saw Tony Cobb and in that film, I guess we felt that we have to get rid of gill nets. That was an important initiative. So based on last year, that's happening. And half of the fish from Fogo Island is ending up in Toronto and places like that. And the fishermen indeed are being paid double the amount of the union negotiated price. So everybody's benefiting.
Thank you, Gordon. Oh, and also if you could say your name quickly before your comment, because we don't all know each other, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to say thank you to the organizers again. I just briefly want to say a piece about the ocean. Obviously, we're talking about economy, we're talking about ecological soundness and sustainability, but I also want to talk about the spiritual nature of the ocean. Certainly, that's a huge part of my draw to our existence here. It was a huge part of the reason why I decided to pursue the Tickle Swim for mental health, a challenge to just dive in. And so I would appreciate conversation certainly about the spiritual side of our ocean and what it means to us culturally, economically, and otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. Yes, Laurie.
Hi, I'm Laurie Clark, and I am a sound artist, and I couldn't help but notice the beautiful sounds of the rope that was not made of plastic. That was very, very evocative, and just the feeling of the weight of the rope falling, and just really the embodiment of the practice of the pulling. I just found that very evocative, and noted the shift to plastic in terms of the ropes and lines.
Well, you can't shut us up over on this end. Chris Aylward, I enjoyed the sound design on both of those films. I thought it was brilliant. Conflicted feelings about the Hand.Line.Cod, just the fact that the market for these fish, which are harvested in a way that, yes, is centuries old and is probably, obviously, more ecologically friendly, that the market is to high-end restaurants in Toronto. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I think wonderful that they've found a way to find a market and to enhance the value. But I don't know, Fogo seems to be in this kind of place of elitism in terms of where it markets itself. And I find it complex. I don't know, I just reflecting out loud. But I thought, you know, that we hand-lined cod for generations for a very different purpose. It's just interesting to reflect on. That's it.
Thank you. And I think you bring up a really interesting point that's going to be at stake throughout this whole conference, if I can be so bold, and that is the relationship to market demands and identity, and how the ocean is mediating that in ways that may be fruitful, but also in ways that may change our identity. And who knows, like, if it's for the better or for the worse, it's for the collective to decide. But yeah, I'd like to open that one up very briefly.
Yeah, my name's Bill Monavecchi, and I just, you know, this thing about markets, I just want to mention something. Janet and I just got back from Portugal, and the markets there are just covered with salt fish, and they're all from Norway. And when you put into perspective that the Portuguese first came here, you know, to ply their trade, the first New World trade for salt fish was here, and yet every salt fish in the markets in Portugal, and I'm sure Spain and other places as well, are from Norway. So I just think there's lots of opportunity, and I just want to put that there. And I think there's a lot of opportunity, I think, as we saw, for handlining and going back to those basic traditions. But lots of markets out there we're just not tapped into at all.
Yeah, over here.
Thanks. I'm Susan Cave. Thanks, Bill, for that great comment about the saltfish market. And thanks, Gordon. I was actually in Fogo Island in 1985 with the Quality Improvement Project. I worked with provincial government, Department of Fisheries, and I worked with federal as well. So what I'm interested in, Gordon, is what you think of actually the markets. And I was thinking more, I don't mind. I think that what they're doing is great, getting the hand-line market. And there was always a tiny amount of hand-lining going on down in Fogo Island, not a huge amount. I'm thrilled that over 50% of it has gone into the hand-line market. And it's a bit complex, I guess, because the industry structure in Newfoundland and where they, you know, and the whole thing anyways, the union and the companies. I'm just wondering what you have. I know you've had a real concentration with Fogo Island and with Labrador, and I'm just wondering what you think of a way to improve it for all the industry. Thank you.
Do you want to respond, Gordon?
Well, we got interested in this in Fogo Island because of the Fogo Island Inn. We wanted the Fogo Island Inn to have the best quality fish in the province and in the country. And so you couldn't get that with the gill nets. So through cod potting and through handline, we were able to go directly to the market, not going through, there's no one in between Fogo Island fish and the markets in Toronto. So it's shipped directly by, and it's frozen, of course, because there's not enough fish to do this in a fresh fish sense, but it's shipped up to Toronto and sold directly to the high-end restaurants for a very good price. Now, could you do that all over Newfoundland? I suppose theoretically you could do it if you were to go out and find the markets and be able to negotiate the prices and so on. So it's certainly possible. If it can be done on Fogo Island, it can be done in other places. But it won't be done with gill net fish. That you can, for sure. It'll have to be cod pot or handline fish for that to happen, because the quality is just not there in the gill net fish.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Julie Huntington, and it was an interesting film. Thank you. The last one, I wish they would have saved the britches because I think we could have eaten them, and I love, my favorite part of the cod is the head, I have to say. And, you know, I think that's something that people have forgotten how to cook. I mean, I'm down the wharf and everyone's filleting their fish and dumping the racks in the water, and we're bringing them home and boiling them for fish stock. So I think just appreciating the entire fish and then bringing home the guts for the garden. So.
And I think the question can be opened in even more direct terms of, is the fishery, and particularly the cod fishery, still an integral part of the identity of young people in this province?
Before you get on to that.
I'm just throwing out provocative questions for the discussion. Yeah. But please, Gail.
I just wanted to say what delighted me about those films was how happy they were, right? They were in touch with nature, right? They were, in touch. And so intelligent, right? And so natural, not sophisticated, but just beautiful people, right? That's what impressed me. And I guess when you do things in a way that's not too technical and all this kind of stuff, that kind of thing comes out. Happiness, very important.
For sure. Sister Mary T., did you want to say something about that?
I'm just going to reiterate what has been said. I was really struck also by the happiness of the people that were there, and it brought me back to our own small community where I grew up, and it's such a holistic way of life, really, and the rhythm of the boat and the rhythm of the hand lining in and out, up and down. You know, it's a musical thing, and it's like your breath. The breath is giving and the receiving part of life. And I was really touched by that. And the fact is that we sometimes forget that the ocean and the air and the freshness of it all is a way of ministering to us. You know, we think we get so much looking for the fish and so on. And the people, the fishermen in the community where I grew up, like, they had a great respect for the ocean. And they depended on the ocean, and they knew if they took care of it, they took the amount that they needed, that it would take care of them. So it was that kind of a relationship that I think is being lost in some of the commercial ways that we do things.
What about from this side of the room? Is there anybody who has a comment? I feel like one person. This side, please reflect, because it's going to be the last word on this side of the room, so we're nearing on time.
Now I feel like I should pass the mic over to the other side. My name is Kim Olson. I think the one thing that resonated with me and carried across the music and the reading and the films is intuition. And I think we intuitively know what's best for the oceans, for the people, for the planet. And it's just about mobilizing that intuition into action and change. I think a lot of the tools are there.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hello, my name's Alistair Black. I'm originally from Scotland. I lived here for 20 years. I've lived in Iceland, spent some time in Scandinavia. Not traveled that much in the world, but I've seen enough of fisheries collapse all over the place. When I was a kid growing up at the same time as that first movie was shown here in Newfoundland, I was watching the destruction of the West Coast Scotland fishery. Started off with the destruction of the herring, and all the whitefish died off, and then started fishing down the food chain until finally there was nothing left. I come to Iceland, and Iceland has just put in a 200-mile zone protection to protect the fishery there of their cod, which was successful, and that was the first time that it had been done, and it was much to the chagrin of the British fleet of 400 boats coming out of Grimsby, Birmingham, and Hull, and they were going up there like the longliners, like the guy was saying, you know, this is what we need, longliners. This is a huge mistake. I think we know that now. And I moved here. And guess what? There's a moratorium in place, and everybody was grieving over the loss of the cod. All I'll say is this. It's a huge planet we live on. 2/3 of the world's surface is oceans. 40% of the world's biomass has been lost in the ocean since 1970. This isn't just a problem about how you cook cod and which bit you like the best and how romantic it is, the sound of one thing or another. This is a global crisis, and we look at it through far too narrow a viewpoint. It's about krill, it's about ocean currents, it's about climate, it's about our attitude to the product. And I work offshore in the oil industry. I'm also an environmentalist. I hear a lot of very tribal, divisive conversation. And I think that we need to be much bigger in our viewpoint. I think the fisherman doing the Hand.Line.Cod would be better off not flicking his fag end into the sea. And plastics, oh boy, we could be here forever talking about plastics. There's not a square inch of the ocean that's left that has microplastics in it, absorbing heavy metals. So this is a huge, huge issue, far bigger than we've got time for to contemplate, and far bigger than is even comfortable to be even to think about. So my final word on that is just to say that I think we need to look to the big picture, not the small one.
Thank you so much. And on that note, I think we'll end the discussion here. So on behalf of myself, Kyla Bruff, Sean McGrath, co-director for New Earth, Barry Stephenson, co-director as well, and the whole organizing crew, thank you so much for being here tonight. Please enjoy some food outside.